Hello and welcome to Newsmax TV. I'm Senior Editor David Patton, and we're delighted to have with us today former Speaker of the House, Mr. Newt Gingrich. No doubt you're familiar with him as a best-selling author, as a movie producer, also one of the leading GOP presidential candidates, architect of the Contract with America, and now he's about to add another chapter to his storied career, co-host of the new CNN Crossfire program. And we're very excited to have you with us today.
Well, I'm glad to be with you, and I'm really glad with all of the folks who watch Newsmax and who rely on Newsmax to have this chance to share with them what we're doing at Crossfire.
Now, in the debut program, Senator Rand Paul said that it wasn't so much America's credibility that's at stake, but rather the president's personal credibility that seems to be possibly drawing America into another war in the Middle East. Do you agree with that analysis? And has Obama in his handling of this matter possibly weakened the presidency in a sense?
Well, I think Senator Rand Paul has been pretty correct in his analysis of what's going on. I think that first of all, the United States is the most powerful country in the world. Whatever happens in the next few weeks over Syria, the United States will be the most powerful country in the world. So it doesn't seem to me very likely that you're going to see the United States lose prestige. But you could see Barack Obama lose a lot of prestige. And frankly, he brought it on himself. I mean, this has been so badly mishandled that I think you have to go back to President Jimmy Carter to have anything comparable in national security in terms of just totally flat failing to meet the test of competence.
Now, the program has an interesting new feature, Ceasefire. It comes at the end. You talk about areas of agreement. It's an interesting new twist. And one of the things you talked about is agreement that it is great news that Russia is getting involved diplomatically in trying to resolve the Syria issue. I'm curious, can we really be confident, though, that we're going to have a positive outcome, given the fact that until yesterday, Syria, of course, would not even admit that it possessed chemical weapons?
That's right. It is kind of ironic that you have President Assad now prepared to give up the weapons that he didn't have. And I think that just tells you a little bit about how the world works. But I would say Ronald Reagan had it right when he said trust but verify. The Russians have taken a positive step. I suspect they have privately put enormous pressure on the Syrians. And as a result, the Syrians have said they would go along with it. If, in fact, in the next few days, you could get a genuine agreement that the Syrians will identify their chemical warfare systems and that they will then allow the United Nations to destroy them, I think that would be dramatically better than a very tiny bombing campaign that frankly won't accomplish anything.
I'm curious, do we still need a vote in Congress either way? Because if there's a UN treaty, conceivably the Senate could be involved. If there is hostilities, you still need a vote in the House, right?
Well, look, I think first of all that depending on what we see happen in the next couple of days, I think it is very unlikely that they can win a vote in the House. The last vote count I saw was 5-1 against. Now, I used to be the Republican whip, so I have some notion of how you go about getting votes in the House. And when you're down 5-1, you have an enormous mountain to climb. So I think you have to start with that understanding that there's a very high likelihood they just can't win, and that nothing Obama can say is going to shift that. He might get from 5-1 down to 3-1 against, but that's still a decisive, crushing defeat. Second, if the agreement is entirely at a government-to-government level, you would not need the Senate to confirm it because it wouldn't involve any U.S. obligations. It would be a commitment by the Syrians to the United Nations that they will allow the United Nations to come in and clean it up, and we would have some right to supervise that and make sure it's real. I think the odds are probably not any better than 50-50 that this is real, but as compared to where the administration was heading, I think that it's a much better gamble than what Secretary Kerry said recently would be an unbelievably small bombing campaign. Well, I mean, what is the point of that?
And we've heard all kinds of mixed messaging from the administration. Some people say they're making it up as they go along. Some people are saying it's amateur hour at the White House. What do you think President Obama needs to say in his speech to the American people tonight to kind of move this in a positive direction?
I think the most he can hope for is to say to the American people that his efforts have led the Russians finally to step up to the plate, that defeating him in the House or Senate would take all the pressure off the Russians, and that therefore I think what they're going to do is postpone the vote. I think they're going to say, let's give it a week or two, because if they don't vote for the next week or two, they might actually solve it. If they do vote and the House says, no, you can't do it, then you have really eliminated any incentive for Putin to step in and try to save the Syrians.
We've seen President Obama's poll numbers. They seem to be crashing. Republicans are certainly happy about that. It's not clear that a weakened image of a U.S. president is positive on the international scene. When Obama came into office, he compared himself to Ronald Reagan, of all people, and now we see the situation that he's in. Is there a central character flaw in this president, in the way he and the West Wing are operating, that has led us to this point, that has put this president in this position? Because a recent poll says that Americans do feel that President Obama is responsible for a lot of the problems that he's now facing.
Well, I think the president has two enormous handicaps. One is that he's a genuine left-winger, and therefore he has a lot of ideas that don't work. And whether that's raising taxes or Obamacare killing jobs or the Environmental Protection Agency issuing more red tape. I mean, he has really been presiding over the weakest economy since the Great Depression, and most of his policies make it weaker. So in that sense, I think he has a genuine problem. That's who he is. That's what he believes. It just doesn't work. The other problem he has is a little bit like Jimmy Carter. If you watch President Obama, he has this tendency to be kind of a college professor, and he goes off on things my favorite the other day was when he said in St. Petersburg, "I was elected to make peace, not to start wars." Well, he's in the middle of a campaign trying to get House members to vote yes to bombing Syria, and he's saying, that's not why I was elected. If I had been an undecided House member, I'd have said, I got it. I'm for the make peace half of that. And you have this constant internal conflict between the pacifism and the isolationism and the keep America weak ideology that he came out of, and the fact that as president he heads the most powerful nation in the world. So you have this very strange combination that I think make it difficult for him to balance what he's doing.
Some have said it's like watching Hamlet play out on the geopolitical global stage. But
remember, this is Hamlet with drones.
Which is a dangerous proposition, I might add. The idea of getting Russia involved now in Middle Eastern diplomacy, doesn't that come with some hazards? I mean, after all, as of a few weeks ago, Russia's really only ally in the Middle East was Syria, which was melting down before our very eyes. Now it seems like they're back in the game. Not necessarily a good thing for U.S. foreign policy, would you say?
Well, it's strange. I said on Crossfire last night that whoever thought you'd have Putin bailing out Obama. So, and remember, the Russians aren't doing this because they're good guys. I mean, I always try to remind people, Putin was a senior KGB agent. This is a very tough, very ruthless man. He is a Russian nationalist. He wants to reestablish Russia as a great power. And I guarantee you that whatever he does, he's doing with Russian interest at heart. He's not trying to help Obama. He's not trying to help the International Chemical Warfare Convention. He's thinking like a Russian. I suspect that they see an opportunity here to play a role which makes them a bigger player on the world stage, which protects their ally. Remember, they want Assad to survive. And so they are really moving. You have a Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Jordan, America coalition that wants to beat Assad. You have an Iranian-Russian coalition that wants to protect Assad. And that's what the underlying power struggle is. And that's where Obama could have a problem, because the anti-Assad Syrian forces were livid this morning over the idea that there'd be some agreement just to take away his weapons, because that leaves him in power. And they were really hoping that the U.S. was going to bomb him so that they would begin to weaken him so they could be driven out of power. So if you are the anti-Assad rebels, you don't necessarily see this deal as a good idea.
And American voters don't necessarily want to do anything in Syria that would help rebels, some of whom at least seem to be linked to Al-Qaeda.
There's no question that some of the rebels are Al-Qaeda and various branches. There's no question that they're anti-Christian. There's no question that some of them have done horrible things. I mean, you can choose which of these really bad, destructive, vicious groups do you favor, but there are no good guys in this fight. I think that's why, if the last poll I saw, 85% of the American people said don't get involved in the Syrian civil war. Now, that's a real national judgment. I mean, when you get up into that kind of number, that means people have talked to each other. I go to a local restaurant called the McLean Family Restaurant. The other morning, I had like 6 people in a row say to me, we don't need to get involved in Syria. Not a single person said, let's do it. But just person after person would drop by, I mean, including the waitress. I mean, to just say, this makes no sense. I had somebody tell me yesterday, I guess a congressman said yesterday, that for the first time in his career, his mother called him on policy. And she said, I want you to vote no. I mean, it's that kind of, the country is rendering a judgment. We've been through, literally, if you think about it, we've been engaged in the Middle East since the hostage crisis in Iran in October of '79. We had Marines killed in '83. We have been through the Khobar Tower bombings. We've been through 2 wars in Iraq. We've been through a war in Afghanistan. Frankly, at one level, the American public is just saying, enough of it. We're not gaining ground here. We are spending lives and spending money, and all we're doing is feeding a region that likes to hate itself.
Now, there's one thing going on in the Middle East that I think we all agree that we can't turn our backs on, and this is this enrichment of nuclear materials in Iran, a very frightening proposition for much of the world, even much of the Arab world. What do you think Iran's mullahs are thinking when they look on this spectacle of a U.S. president and a Congress and the United Nations and the American people now really stepping up and saying, we've had enough war?
I think that it emboldens them. I think it makes them more confident. And I think, it's one of the great surprises to me, I guess, has been the number one threat to the United States in the region is Iran, because if the Iranians get a nuclear weapon, they change the whole balance of power in the region. And nobody knows what they would do with it. Yet we have focused on Libya, we have focused on Egypt, we have focused on Syria. It's almost like the administration looks for any excuse to avoid confronting the real problem, because the real problem is scary. These are tough people. They lost 1 million men in the Iran-Iraq war in the 1980s. And they kept coming. They didn't quit. So you can't see Iran as an easy problem. And I think faced with a hard problem, Obama looks for something else to talk about.
Well, Speaker Gingrich, thanks so much for joining us on Newsmax TV. And we will be looking to see the new Crossfire. And thank you for joining Newsmax TV.